What is up, Pitt fans? Thank you so much for tuning in to Inside the Panthers on YouTube. My name is Steven Thompson, coming at you with another Inside Pitt practice report. It is opening day for college basketball, but before I head up to the Pete to cover Pitt as they take on North Carolina A&T in the season opener, we've got some football to talk. There's still 3 games left in the 2023 season. A disappointing campaign for the Panthers so far, but still some stuff to play for and some stuff to look forward to. We talked to Pat Narduzzi a little bit about that, in his first press conference of the week as the Panthers get set to take on Syracuse. And, the thing he led off with, and I don't think this is insignificant, I don't think he would have said anything, different necessarily. But, and we talked about this, following the Florida State game. But for as miserable as this season has been, I don't think you see guys quitting. I don't think you see a let up in effort. Maybe you saw a little bit of a dip in the second half against Notre Dame, but that was a 51-point loss, and it looked like it was headed that way pretty early. Um, and I just don't think that there's been a dip in the effort or the want to or the desire for these kids over these past few games as things have started to really look like they're taking a turn for the worse. And Pat Narduzzi can say that all he wants. He said it all year that he's like the effort from his kids, but I think you saw it first of all in the way that they played on Saturday. Against Florida State, they were completely overmatched. They have, they're 2-7. They have every reason to kind of give up on the season. Bowl eligibility it continues to slip even further out of their fingers. There's only a very, very slim outside chance that they can make it in as a 5-7 team. But I think whether they felt slighted by Narduzzi's comments or simply motivated to take on a top 4 team or just kind of playing for themselves, they played with some passion. They played with heart. Christian Veyer said it following the game that a lot of those penalties come from, a lot of the penalties that they committed, and the Panthers committed a lot of penalties. They come from a desperation to make plays. They come from a desperation to make things happen. They are not, it's the complete opposite of what not playing with effort would look like. Those guys clearly wanted to win that game. So whether it was, you know, pissed off, wanted to prove themselves like Bayer and linebacker Brandon George said, or, just like I said, facing a top 4 team, felt slighted by their coach's comments from the week before. It all, came together into, effort wise and intangibly, a pretty good performance against the Seminoles. And, I think the score reflected that to a certain extent, but also just watching that game, you felt like they played a little bit better than 24-7 against the number 4 team in the country. And it's something that's hard to get a grip on. I'll admit that, especially because I think, public comments will be ultra sensitive moving forward, especially after what Narduzzi said after Notre Dame. But while we may not get a total grip on it from what the head coach says or any of the other coaches say, it's something that I think is important to monitor. Attitude and morale are real big things to keep an eye on as the Panthers hit the home stretch and look forward to 2024. It's one of the ways we'll be able to tell if 2-7 or 2-10, as it looks like this season is heading towards, can really spiral out of control and into something bigger. Just how heavy the attrition this offseason is and how rotten the vibes are, going into 2024. And I think it's a pretty foregone conclusion that things won't feel great and that there will be some losses this offseason. They will kind of hinge upon Narduzzi and the coaching staff's ability to sell everyone on a vision for the future. And that starts with what you're able to do right now. And right now, it at least seems like the players believe that they still, have a future, that they have stuff to play for. And that's a pretty positive development if you're looking for any heading into 2024. Kind of to piggyback off of that, I think as much as this program and its coaches don't really want to admit this, there is an increasingly bigger focus on looking towards 2024. And we got a little bit more evidence of that in the Florida State game. And then this week, that next generation is really starting to show up. Rasheem Biles tipped another punt against Florida State. He and Jordan Bass getting plenty of reps as backup linebackers. Sam Okunlola, Jimmy Scott, those guys are both playing bigger roles on the defensive line, especially as You think about Nate Temple as the guy who's not making really enough impact plays, same as Bam Brema, impact plays as they were maybe at the beginning of the year. And so you're going to start to look younger. Sammy O has been awesome, making a bunch of impact plays, getting a bunch of sacks. Jimmy Scott's coming along a little bit. Uh, but BJ Williams is now a co-starter at right guard. That's a new development. That's new this week on the depth chart. Blake Zuvovic, redshirt senior, has been demoted to a backup left guard. Williams, a true freshman, is a co-starter alongside Jason Collier Jr., who's a senior. That's in addition to the obvious ones, Kenny Johnson at receiver, Christian Bayer at quarterback, your three young safeties, but those were kind of there from the jump. Um, kind of lost in all that was cornerback. Cornerback was a position I was curious about walking into this week. You've got three seniors who have kind of monopolized that position for a couple years now, but their time is pretty quickly running out. At the same time, we haven't seen their backups, Rylan Gandy, Noah Bigelow, Tamarian Crumpley, those guys who are kind of next up. We haven't really seen them start to get rotated in just yet, but that could change soon. Narduzzi gave a pretty big shout out to Rylan Gandy today when we talked to him. Said he's a player to watch moving forward, someone who's earned a lot more time based off of his special teams play. Been really good on punt return as I'm not sure. I guess jammer. Those guys who go against the gunners on the outside and try to keep them from block them up, make sure they can't make a play on the returner going down the field. But Narduzzi had really good things to say about his play there. And then also I remember, going back to training camp this year and even the year prior, that Gandy was a guy that had really separated himself among those young corners. Narduzzi seemed to imply that he wasn't really ready yet earlier in the year. They were a little nervous about throwing him out there into game action, but they feel better about it now. There is clearly a balance to strike with wanting to win now. Like losing games doesn't do you any good, even if you're throwing young guys in there as a college football team. You don't get a better draft pick for losing a bunch of games and all that. But I do think that desire to win now is maybe becoming less of an emphasis as they kind of look at where the season's headed, as bowl eligibility becomes even less and less likely, and that balance of winning now versus looking forward is beginning to skew a little bit more in terms of looking forward. Because look, if you're trying to win games, then Rylan Gandy probably not going to play a ton for you. If you're trying to win now, you got three senior corners who have played really, really well, I've thought, and so this just to me is another signal that we're further in the youth movement, that these guys, we just got to see what we have, and they got to move forward from there. And that kind of takes me into my next and final topic, and probably the most important one of this afternoon that we talked to Pat Narduzzi about. He was asked whether or not Nate Yarnell will see a little bit of time at quarterback over these final three games, and he deflected. He said he hadn't thought about whether or not Nate will play down the stretch here. He said that's Frank Signetti's decision, which is a refrain we've heard before. And as the quarterback and quarterback's coach and offensive coordinator, it would make sense that Signetti has a pretty significant say in that decision. Narduzzi said that earlier in the year when was asked about a starting quarterback change from Christian Bayer from Phil Dracovic to Christian Bayer. So, at the very least, Pat's been pretty consistent with his public statements, saying that quarterback play that's Frank's decision, that's his area, that's what he gets to decide. And let's assume that Narduzzi is being 100% truthful with this, saying that it's all up to Signetti. He gets the final say over quarterback order. And I don't think he's not lying necessarily, but Narduzzi has not been completely forthcoming about certain things before, and he probably will be again before it's all said and done. So let's put that to the side for a second and just assume that this is 100% truthful. And it makes sense. Narduzzi's not an offensive guy. He acknowledges that, which I can respect. Staying out of an area that you don't know well and delegating it to people who do is pretty good leadership, in my opinion. That's a good general formula. But he is the head freaking coach, man. And you can't forfeit this. This is the most important player on the field, position on the field. So I would expect the head coach to have at least part of a say in who mans that position and have a good sense of how to evaluate who's playing well there and who's not. If you do forfeit on this, if you do hand it completely off to an assistant coach, it makes you look either completely ineffectual and like you can't be trusted to provide input on these things, or like you're throwing your offensive coordinator completely under the bus. Both of those are entirely plausible, but neither really reflect very well on Pat Narduzzi, in my opinion. You got a little bit of a hint last week that he is maybe going with the latter, that he is maybe putting a bunch of more public blame on Frank Signetti than he had before, when he talked about how he wasn't happy with how much Gavin Bartholomew played against Notre Dame and how he was being used. All in all, it seems odd to me that the head coach is kind of completely abdicating, responsibility for, like I said, the most important position on the field. And it seems like a less than subtle way, honestly, of telling us that he has not been pleased with Frank Signetti as of late, especially as of late, maybe overall in general. But that seems like something that he should either address directly or not at all. If you're going to publicly try and hint that you are displeased with your offensive coordinator, you should just be able to come out and say that. You shouldn't have to hide behind anything. And if you're not willing to say that directly and publicly, I don't think you should really say it at all. But with that, I'm headed out of here. Thank you all for tuning into another Inside Pitt practice report. I'm headed up to the Pete in just a little bit to cover the Pitt Panthers, the start of their 2023-24 season, try to capitalize on that momentum and maybe make it back to another NCAA tournament. But it all starts tonight against North Carolina A&T. So stay tuned to this channel. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. That's youtube.com/@InsideThePanthers. And then find some more reporting from the rest of the football season and this week against Syracuse. And then also basketball season as that gets underway at InsideThePanthers.com. Like I said, appreciate you all tuning in. And until next